I'd like to introduce Bill Norris and Susan Mittelstadt, who are both fantastic birders. And yes, you are, don't worry about it, it's okay. And they are going to be giving us an introduction to common and a few uncommon birds along Cherry Creek Canyon. And then tomorrow, there is a field trip to go out and find those birds. All right. Some of them, yeah, find whatever you can, and maybe more. But you meet in the Fine Arts parking lot. Do you meet on the south side of that lot? Or
well, that direction is west, so
right.
This direction would be east.
Right, but you go up to the parking lot, you go west.
See a bunch of cars.
Yeah, just look for the people hanging around with binoculars. Okay, okay. Meet at 7 o'clock, and then you can carpool up to the place we're going to start the outing. Okay, so then here, do you need this expanded here?
You can
do that.
Okay. Yeah, I have to tell a little story, and then Susan's going to do a lot of talking. About a year and a half ago, Susan says, yeah, right. I have always done the Gila River count with Jackie and Jim and Keller Supercrop.
Okay.
And that particular year, a couple of years ago, for a number of reasons, you were not available. I think you had some personal business or what have you. And I saw an email go around from these characters named Bert and Susan Mittelstadt. I didn't know, and they were looking for someone to come along with. And so you're coming with me. This is what everything was. I teach here, and we're all still masked up. And the morning that we did this, you two showed up with your dogs, and we did the Gila River count. And I quickly found out that you guys have been on the road, being the Gypsy Carpenters, what, 20 years, 10 years? Maybe not quite that long.
13.
What's how many?
13.
Yeah, but these two are fantastic birders. They see things better than I do, really, really well. And it turned out we did the hawk count together with Karen Blizzard. Then this year, I couldn't do the Gila River count. I was stranded up in northern Michigan visiting my folks over Christmas with this snowstorm. So the four of you went out, and I got this big, long list. It's like, I don't remember for the Gila River count. I don't remember seeing all these birds. So having you four going out, I don't think my presence was even needed. I'm being a little bit facetious here, but they're excellent birders. And I asked Susan to co-present this with me because she knows birds really well, and Bert knows them pretty well too. And so we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to introduce you to some birds we might see along a 1 mile stretch of road on Highway 15 between Cherry Creek Campground and McMillan Campground. We got together for about a half hour a couple days ago. It's kind of hard to trim that list down. And what did I hear Susan say? I didn't realize we had this many birds. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, you're in for a treat. Let me go 2 more slides, and I'm gonna let you do a lot of talking. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can this go on? Yeah.
You push on the arrow?
Just hit the arrow. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Take it.
I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
No,
But you said, yeah, well, we're kind of doing taking
So-
here.
Bill and I have, I'm new to birding, actually, relatively. I've only been seriously birding maybe 8 years.
Would know it by me.
But I came in the age of technology, and that's one of the things I think we'll talk about. You know, eBird helped me learn the birds, and now Merlin's helping people learn the calls. And so I learned to bird in Baja California Sur. I had really good friends that are professional guides in Portal. They showed us the ropes of basic birding and how to use eBird and things like that. But when I went back to where I wintered in Baja, I realized, wow, this is a really manageable subset of birds to learn. And so we really dove deep into the birds of Baja and didn't have to, because we were on the Pacific side, we didn't have to worry about any of the shore birds really, or any of the, it was just strictly.
Didn't have all these funky gulls?
No, just a couple gulls, you know, and we frequently just be like, whatever, it's a gull, you know. Coming here, I have to really, I'm still learning. So I don't want to profess that I'm an expert here at all.
We're all on that learning curve in different ways.
The thing about birding is you never stop learning. You'll always see something new, especially what I like about it. And I think this is where I do specialize is I can notice something I haven't seen or heard before. I'll be like, that's new. I haven't seen that. I might not know what it is, but it triggers something in my brain. And that's what I would encourage all of you to really trust yourself when something triggers in your brain and you go, I don't really feel like I've seen that before. Because you can trust yourself. If you've done a lot of birding locally, you will learn who's here. And this time of year is a great time of year to see those oddball birds and catch your lifers. You know, maybe you've been missing lifers or something. And
So Susan, if you feel comfortable standing here, I'll run them and
Okay.
trust me, I'll jump in here.
so we sorted it by habitat. And what we like about Cherry Creek is there's a lot of habitats, and I don't know if y'all know this, but the edges of habitats are like the birdiest, most diverse places for birds. So you go like in Baja, you got the ocean, you got the desert, you got the mountains. Well, here we have all that. We don't have the ocean, but we have the lakes, we have the rivers, we have the different forests, and we have the riparian areas and blah, blah, blah. And so Cherry Creek is a perfect example of that interface of the different things. And so our first ones, Bill, are what? They're the open cliffside birds.
Actually, if I can get this thing to advance. Yeah, this is.
So we're gonna talk about this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as I find out, I'm 64 years old, I'm gonna say it, you guys all catch up to me, I don't see things as well as I used to. For whatever reason, I still hear things. There's a lot of different things that go into identifying birds, and we go out quoting, I guess, Hillary Clinton, takes a village sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, identifying birds, knowing what habitat you're in, knowing the bird visually, knowing the song. Some birds have a really distinctive behavior that's gonna help you
Tail
converge.
wag or their
Yeah.
flicks.
So this is a courtier and flycatcher, at least that's what it said on the internet when I think, and it says flycatcher, this particular flycatcher, its habitat, it likes to be near water. And among a group of a pretty diverse, difficult to identify birds, the hidden axe flycatchers, this one living near water in the west has a pretty distinct eye ring. It's got wing bars, and flycatchers like to the yellow lower bill here. Flycatchers, as a rule, like to sally forth. And one of my students, ornithology this semester, what does that mean to sally forth? To fly out from a perch and then come back. Whether you're looking at a vermilion flycatcher or a sage phoebe, and most flycatchers do that. And help me out here, Susan. Does this one have a distinctive, this courtier and flycatcher tail wag?
Goes up,
Goes up. The gray flycatcher goes,
down.
yeah.
But a lot of them go up. It's one of those distinctive things. If it goes down, then you know it's not this.
Yeah, so when we go out tomorrow, I hope all of you are able to come. We're gonna meet at the Fine Arts Center, as Michelle said. We're gonna be relying on, it's hard to show behavior on a static PowerPoint slide, but we'll be using our collective knowledge and skills here. I can tell you, we're gonna hear a whole bunch of stuff. This time of year, it's easier to hear things than to see things, but with all these young eyes, or these eyes, we should see and hear a lot of stuff, and we're gonna present to you what we kind of came up with a list of birds you might expect to see in particular habitats. So habitat, what you see, visual, auditory, and behavior.
And I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this is both, I like to bird in a group. I like to learn from other people. I like to hear the tricks that you're using to make those IDs, because you never know when the trick is going to stick in your head. Who's got the thing that I learn experientially out in the field, doing the IDs, slogging it out, talking to people. Some people can read the book and they'll remember it. I never been able to do that. I never could do that.
So this is our first habitat.
Our first habitat, which actually hilariously, I've never actually gazed upon, because I thought we were going up the creek, but we're going in the campground, south of the
We'll start
campground.
just south of the campground to begin with.
So what kind of birds are you gonna find in these vertical cliffs, open sky? I mean, I know one obvious one that's not on our list.
Which one did I
The
forget?
turkey vulture,
Oh, yeah.
right? So,
Swallows.
swallows.
We got a swallow coming up here.
Right, but here are
Yeah.
canyon wren, or is that, I'm just like,
It's canyon wren.
yeah.
Here's the auditory. And we probably won't see this.
Bill's embedded the sounds into the slideshow. Okay, so.
This is a pretty easy little trick in PowerPoint. Yeah, take it.
I don't even know how to
So
get
what if we get to see, and I'll run this. What if we see a canyon wren? What are the distinguishing characteristics here,
Well,
Susan?
faint. I mean, I go by the white throat, the reddish tail. This is solid. Eyebrows are a big giveaway in your wrens. There's not a big eyebrow here. There's a little bit of a thing there. Its bill's not super curved, but it's not short either. I go by the call. I mean, these guys can't help but call, and I rarely see them. I've only seen a few. You know,
Spring Canyon down there
I
across
just,
from Rock
yeah,
Mountain.
I just don't make the effort, right? I know it's there. I'm like, there it is. And if it chooses to reveal itself, then I'm like, great, I can see it. But I'm not gonna spend a lot of time trying to chase it down.
This is probably the first bird that we hear. What are we looking at here?
This one I like because it's a flying cigar with a bow-shaped wings, right? And it's got a different jizz than your swallows.
What's
So
jizz? That same as just all?
yeah.
What's the difference? It's jizz.
It's jizz. So it's what I was talking about, that sense of what a bird looks like overall. It's everything. It's its behavior, but it's its body morphology. How big is the head in relation to the body? How long are the wings? Where are the wings when the bird is perched in relation to its tail? How does it hold its head when it's perched? Is it going to sally forth? I mean, the jizz is actually the physical morphology of the bird, and that sense you get like a robin, like thrushes are all shaped the same, right? You can look at a thrush and you'll be like, oh, that looks like a robin, but it's not a robin, right? You can see, but it's shaped like a robin. And so the jizz of this is how I make the identity ID, because you rarely see them close enough, but you see that bow of the wing and that white throat that's really stands out. And I think you can hear them too.
You never see them perched.
Yeah, I've got,
Right.
yeah, I'd like to know who rappelled down and got this photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah, these birds are very clumsy on land. All four of their toes are facing forward. And usually, at least for me, again, I hear things a lot better than I see things. I hear this. This is what it sounds like. These are all, I want to bid homage to Dr. Roland Shook, who some of you knew. He died a few years ago. When he retired and handed off ornithology to me, he gave me this big folder of MP3 files. And every one of these MP3 files, I don't know where Roland got them, but we're using them. So how would you describe that? I heard these on Boston Hill a month ago.
Rushed. I rushed.
And they vocalize while they're flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make, you're going to see, but we do have a swallow in here. Violet green swallows, the white is in the kidney areas. It never says that in the field guides. It's
But
on,
this could confuse you, right? If
that's
all
right.
you
It's
look
more on
at.
the sides here on this Swift.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
There you
coming out. So we
Can
have
you
a
tell us
lot of
about-
these up there. I do the ID based on this. I don't,
And the white throat.
yeah, there's the white throat, but nobody else has this.
The white in the kidneys is the way I describe it to my
Yeah, and
students.
to me, it looks like a white rump. If it's because it's moving so fast, you can almost think it's solid, but it's not, right? It's got that break going down the spinal cord. But yeah, the white kidneys, they're very distinctive, very easy to see, but there's a flat tail, there's no the long tail, there's no forked tail, there's no, and then look, there's no, the bow, it's flat. It's not, the Swift's gonna bow like this. I can't believe I'm doing this. This is like some kind of test. How am I gonna do this?
And I would recommend, some of you probably have experience identifying birds by sound. Some of you probably don't. It really enhances your ability to detect birds, and you can do it. You just start with a few birds at a time.
Right,
I've been doing it for 40 years, so I have a little knowledge base. If I were starting from scratch right now at age 54, it'd probably take me a little longer, but it's worth the effort. We're going to probably hear a lot more birds tomorrow than we see. Hopefully we'll see a lot of stuff. Okay.
oh, it's a raven.
That was me, not the
So how did I figure out it was a raven, right? I was like, is that the top or the bottom? It was what gave it away to me was the shape of the tail, okay? So one of the things I like to teach people that are learning to bird is you don't need to see the whole bird. That's like a classic beginner mistake, is being afraid to make an ID in the field because you didn't see the whole bird. And a raven, this tail is enough to give you, it's not a crow, it's a black bird, it's big, because size can be difficult to distinguish in the field as well, especially when these guys are flying around. So But it kind of, from this angle, it's distorted. It kind of looked like a turkey vulture to me for a second. I was like, what's going on with the wings, And you do have to like break down what you can see and like file it and try to dig out what parts So
what would you all, this is tough, and a lot of you know of Dale Zimmerman, who died a few years ago, world-renowned ornithologist. I've had this, some of us knew him really well. And he confessed that sometimes he had a hard time telling common ravens from Chihuahuan ravens.
yeah, and there's
Karen Beckenbach, who co-presented the Sparrow present, I've learned a lot from, talks, I
they
guess.
used to say this is Chihuahuan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because it's kind of rounded here.
It's not pointy.
Yeah,
So, I think there's a lot of controversy with that as the distinguishing mark between a Chihuahuan and a common raven. I personally, it depends on my mood and how I'm feeling and where I am habitat wise and how the birds are behaving. If I am willing to make it, if I'm reporting the eBird, I almost always just say raven species.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great step in your birding career too, is to just accept that you didn't know what it
how
was.
come this isn't a crow, Susan?
It's not a crow.
We know that for an American crow.
Well, this bill is really heavy and it's not flat here. This would be
Flat
flat.
around it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
you
would,
want,
it would look more like a fan. It wouldn't have any point. It would be more rounded.
yeah, if you want to see American crows, go down to Jose Barrios there on Little Walnut, and I know crows. I spent 9 years in Iowa. It
Yeah,
should
they're
be the
all
state
over that
bird.
end of the.
Come on. I tell my students, and I cannot tell distinguish the two raven species locally. The ravens sound like a crow with a bad cold.
And they're all at that end, right in that Y between Pinos Altos, flying over 180 now, like between the tweaker, snappy and the ditch.
You talking about crows?
Crows.
Lake Roberts is, if you're really desperate to see a crow, I suspect most of you are. Lake Roberts, right near where you cut that hiking trail.
Well, if you're like me and you have your eBird alert set up telling you what you haven't seen, crow was like my nemesis this year. It's harassing me. Every time somebody saw a crow, I'd get an email saying, crow, somebody saw a crow in your area. Finally, I saw one. I know somebody else who's got the crow as a nemesis. Not you.
The sound?
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
the sound.
Oh, this guy.
By the way, for those of you who are thinking about preparing your own power, actually, and I'm an old school, I'm not a Luddite, but I'm close to it. It's pretty easy to embed these MP3 files. Did it all this afternoon from Roland's files. The crow with the cold.
So this is the raven, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And while we're listening to that raven, our first stop tomorrow probably
There's
will
somebody else in
be,
the background, Bill. Who is it?
tell me.
I can't.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So we're gonna stop and we're gonna look on the rocks. We're gonna look for whitewash, AKA that uric acid slurry, AKA bird poop. And that's gonna give us an indication at least of recent activity of this bird, which occurs, this is about 1/8 of a mile south of Cherry Creek Campground.
And that's this.
You guys recognize what that is?
Yeah.
Do you guys know peregrine falcons occasionally, actually pretty frequently occur up in the forest? And the best place to see them, they'll come screaming over your head, right at that little pull in there. And we really need to carpool, as Rochelle mentioned. There's not room for 10 vehicles. But if we're lucky, we'll see one that's screaming across from these rocks from one side to the other. They are there. Okay, they are in the Gila National Forest. Yes, Jackie?
We saw one last weekend.
Saying this spot I was talking about? I'm not arguing with her. Yeah, she knows her birds. All right, so there's hope for us. We didn't see it in my ornithology class a few weeks ago, but anyway, so maybe we'll see a peregrine falcon.
I just saw one. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, and if we give this again, I'm sure we will. I'll throw in a turkey vulture in here because that's something that would be the habitat.
I like to talk about them because the zone.
Talk about them.
Well, the common zone-tail hawk here that's imitating the turkey vulture.
With this
So,
dihedral.
It's worth looking at the turkey vultures when you see them because you might actually score a zone tail. And it's got white it's a little whiter underneath. We don't have a picture, do we? And it has some stripes on its tail. But when it's up flying, that's the only way to tell the difference between you can.
When we get done, we'll pull some
see the
images
head.
up when we
Yeah.
get through.
So falcons, they can be troubling. I wouldn't, I mean, a Merlin has this thing, this, whatever, the Mallard stripe here, right? It's got some barring underneath. It can be difficult to make some of these calls. Merlin's smaller, but it's not, generally it's not gonna be up
Up
there.
in the air, that's gonna hard to judge.
Especially the way they fly, they can be really quick, but these are more likely to be up in the forest. I think this contrast, this yellow here is a lot brighter than the Merlin. I personally, usually it's usually for me, the doubt isn't it's easy to figure out if you can get a good enough view, but if that just depends.
Big if, with a big
Right, it's a
underline.
big if.
Well, is the Merlin much browner?
It is browner and it's smaller, but again, when they're flying and moving between trees and stuff, you don't know. And we had, I mean, out on the Hawk Watch, we had that debate over,
Well, you tell me when we did it the first
yeah, the
time.
first year, we couldn't, I can't remember what we decided, but it was like we were between the two.
And I didn't put a picture of a prairie falcon in here because they don't tend not to occur in the forest, but if you want to see one,
Yeah, another-
go down to Spring Canyon.
That can be
Yes,
really
sir.
difficult.
Why is the falcons, the peregrine so fast compared to other birds?
Well, the morphology of their wing here, I'm not a physics major, but there's a number of aspects of their wing being coming to that sharp point down here. You know,
The torpedo shape
yeah,
really plays a big role. And
yeah, as opposed to like a red-tailed hawk, which they're designed, they can fly plenty fast, not
But
like
they're
this
meant to
for
soar.
soaring.
Okay, and
Yeah.
these guys are actually moving them, they're propelling themselves through the forest or through the desert. They're not soaring looking for prey, they're actually literally sitting and then chasing it.
And these are around, you know, like, Karen Beckenbach, I referred to once, she saw one down there at the airport turnoff just past Hurley. They are
they
around.
endangered in the state? This is like.
I,
one of my-
I'm sure they are.
Okay,
Okay, next habitat. Tree trunks. This kind of gets into the, basically general habitat, and this general habitat, there's 3 or 4 birds which really like, it doesn't have to be ponderosa pine, but they really like to occur on tree trunks. Starting with, we saw one of these a couple weeks ago. This is less common than the other, downy woodpecker.
so if you're an e-birder, downy woodpecker is gonna trigger the review. You're gonna have to defend why you saw a downy woodpecker. They're less common here. So be prepared to notice that the bill is substantially smaller than the skull. Okay, it's a smaller bird than the hairy, but again, size really doesn't cut it. You need to like pick the morphology that defines it, and this bill size is really it. And then to rule out your ladder back, or when you have a hairier downy, right? It's the white stripe down the back. There's no markings on the back. It's just white.
And then this is something you almost never see through binoculars or I see this when I'm visiting my 80-year-old mother-in-law, looking out the dining room window up in Green Bay, Wisconsin in the winter. These tail spots on the
Oh,
outer.
yeah, they talk about that, and I'm like, I've never.
Yeah, that works. If you get it, hairy woodpeckers do not have that.
Yeah,
And I want to play you got something else to say to this?
no, but I have never, I know that.
We're all gonna, including me, we're all gonna learn some things about
Yeah.
birds tonight. So this bird, the hairy woodpecker, I was fortunate a couple weeks ago, we went down to Portal, the Arizona woodpecker, the ladderback woodpecker. They all have this, what's referred to in the bird books as a pick. And then they have, as is referred to in the bird books, as a rattle. And I have to share the real good birders, and I cannot distinguish really well a downy versus a hairy woodpecker. This is maybe not quite as strident, but they all have that pick and that.
I'm just happy to know it's a woodpecker that I should be looking for, right?
What's that?
I'm happy to know it's a woodpecker.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, well, that's a woodpecker.
Then in contrast,
The hairy is kind of.
See how big that bill is? It makes his head look small. So it's the same size is what they say.
Yes.
And there's the white stripe on the back. There's no spots on the tail.
now listen to the pick of the hairy woodpecker via those MP3 files that Roland gave me back in 07. A little more strident.
Yeah, strident's the word.
Very good word, good. And
But
here's the rattle.
that's more strident. But you got the creek going in the background, right? Like, can I tell?
And we saw a downy woodpecker right across from Cherry Creek Canyon with my ornithology class, and One of my students had that Merlin software, it identified it correctly.
Yeah, Merlin seems right on with them. I think because they get recorded a lot. The more Merlin has in their database, the more
Yeah.
the more accurate they are.
I have to share a little story here. I think we're all over 18. I rarely use profanity, at least, my father-in-law, and my father were in the military, sailors, but when I can't resist, when I'm teaching ornithology, tell my students, how do you tell a nuthatch from a brown creeper? Like, ass up, ass down. Right there, I said it. You won't see that. If I offended any, is everybody gonna get head for the doors here? It works. Did they remember that? My students all laugh because they don't hear me use a lot of profanity. I'm no prude by any stroke of the imagination, but it works. And so we have, you can tell Susan a little bit about this white-breasted nuthatch right here.
Well, I love their call. That's one of the calls I know.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds funny. It sort of sounds like Woody Woodpecker. Oh, tiny little woodpecker.
It sounds like there's a western wood pewee in the background there. Peer, maybe.
But to me, this bird is unmistakable. It's got this white face, but there's the pygmy, and then there's the red-breasted, and what else do we have?
There's the brown nuthatch over there in Florida and South Florida.
So it's clear here. This is all white. And
Yeah.
under here, might be a little red there, right?
Yeah.
But the other birds are gonna have a lot more markings. The pygmy is gonna be, it's just like it's so cute.
Yeah, and listening to this,
Oh, that's what I remember.
I've noticed that northern flicker is another bird I forgot to put in here. We'll talk about it at the end. They do that. I hear this more in the winter. They start doing that weird, kind of when they're starting getting the breeding conditions. I always tell my students, when you hear that, love is in the air.
And
The hormones are flowing, baby. That you don't hear that too much in the winter. At least I don't. But when they start doing this, they're thinking about one thing: breeding, baby.
And it carries. One of the things about this call is it carries really far. It could be really quite a distance from you. Not all bird calls. Some bird calls you can use them to dial right in, but this carries through the forest.
And I gotta tell you a quick little story about this, and Susan will tell you about this. Yeah, when you get to a certain age, I've already told you twice how old I am, a lot, including Dr. Zimmerman, who I knew really well, when he was in his late 50s, you could not hear this anymore. A lot of us who get of a certain age cannot hear high frequency bird vocalizations. This and cedar waxwings. I heard a cedar waxwing this morning, by the way. We saw one of these 2 weeks ago out at Cherry Creek, and I heard it. It was like, hallelujah, baby. I still got it. It's probably not going to have it for very long, but that's the truth. A lot of us, basically those high frequencies, we lose them as we get older. And this is one that, of course, who knows how many brown creepers are vocalizing and I'm not hearing. And you never know, but that's just kind of a natural. I'm going to play the vocalization. I'm going to have Susan talk about this. They're really high frequency.
In the background. Or is it not?
That sounds like a black-capped chickadee. That
Oh,
beep.
Okay. See, I don't know these calls. Oh.
But to hear how high pitched that is.
So Merlin, this is where Merlin, when I went out to Cherry Creek this week, there was so much going on. Merlin looked like it was gonna explode. It just was like rattling them off. But you can use it to help you cue in. I don't use it to make my IDs. I use it to heighten my awareness of what I should be looking for. And if I hear a call that a clear call, I might use Merlin, and Merlin tells me what it is. I might listen to Merlin so that I can use my judgment to say, oh yeah, that's what I heard. But I'm not going to use it without some kind of field verification that it's right. So there was a bunch of these picking up. I could not find them, and it was driving me bananas. I could not find them, and I think it was sort of a little bit of what Bill's talking about. My hearing, I can still pick them up, but directionally, I could not cue in where they were at all.
Really cryptic too.
Yeah, and they're very cryptic, but I used to be like, so when I learned to bird, I was taken out because my eyes were so good, and I would be the first person to go, oh, look.
Your eyes are still good.
I'd be like, oh,
Compared to me, I can tell you that.
I always would be like, oh, there's a brown creeper. And so to be out in the field, and I was like, I hear it, I know it's here, and I couldn't find it. So,
Yeah.
but they're crawling around like asses down, and they're just adorable, tiny little cryptic birds. that I find unmistakable. They've got that sort of nuthatchy jizz, but they're not colored at all the same. Okay,
Next habitat, we have.
thank God you're
three-
not asking me what the trees are.
Well, believe it or not, I'm actually a botanist. I do ornithology.
I'm gonna sit here.
So, but that's fine. Yeah, so there are at least two, probably three bird species. Not only do they like forests, but they really like ponderosa pine. I have to get one little botanical anecdote in here. I am a botanist. That's why they hired me here 22 years ago. Right now, if you find this tomorrow, you find a nice, healthy looking ponderosa pine, go up to it. No one's gonna accuse you of being a tree hugger. Smell it. It smells like vanilla. Why it does that? That's a more interesting question, but that's just really fascinating. My students all get this really, wow, didn't know that. Anyway, so one of these birds, which you really liked ponderosa pine, is Grace's
Grace's
warbler.
warbler. Now, warblers are gonna wear us out if we're trying to find them, but they're gonna be calling. So with a group of us, we should be able to get our eyes on a few of them and see them. They're flitting around high in the trees usually. We'll see what our ethics say. Grace's will come into their call very readily.
They have a very distinctive vocalization. And I'm gonna play the real thing here in just a second. You'll hear that. All those ponderosas at the signal peak turn off. You'll hear them anywhere you got any substantial number of ponderosa pines. Yeah, as Susan said, seeing them, that's another story.
But, so what I go off of is the call and that bright yellow. It's like, it's, a substantial amount, it's not just up in the throat. It's coming all, it's like a chat, it's coming all the way down to here. It's blackish brown, gray on top. It's flitting. It's got it's got a solid warbler bill, dark eye. That's what I go on. But I've only seen it a few times.
As many times as you and Bert have spent down in Portal with my class a couple weeks ago, right at the end of that South Fork Road, one came right down about 15 feet over our heads.
Yeah.
It was the best view I've ever had. And this is a southwestern species of wood. There's about 60 species of wood warblers in North America. It's overwhelming. This one really is a southwestern species. Maybe, I don't know if it gets even to Colorado, but.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, let's see how good that is. Well, hit the wrong thing.
I was like, I don't know. It's going faster and faster and faster.
You need to go faster, though.
And it's not very song-like, right? You think warbler is gonna be like a singing songy thing, but it's not.
Not like a thrasher or a mockingbird, that's
No.
for sure. And,
Is that my pygmy?
yep,
Okay, so it is very similar to the white breasted, but it's much smaller and
where there's
tail's
one, there's
really
half a
short.
dozen.
Yeah, and again, if you are e-birding, you're gonna have to defend this right now. It's considered an Arizona bird. I did the research because I was like, why am I defending this? They were everywhere. They were building nests. They were courting. I couldn't get away from the call. And but they're considered in pockets here. And I guess Cherry Creek is one of their pockets. And there's a bunch of them up there. And they're adorable, absolutely adorable.
Well, Bear Mountain Road, that highway, or Forest Road 856. I know Dennis and Sue have been there with me. They're more common. They're not an Arizona bird. That's nonsense.
No, I know. So I think sometimes, Portal is in that area is so heavily birded. And I've been talking to my professional friends and I'm like, we have a lot to offer over here. And it's kind of nice because people don't overrun us. You can go out and you're alone in the field. You're not running into a bunch of birders doing the same thing. So, and I'd never seen this in Portal. I'd seen it in Mexico.
So I liken this, and usually these are very gregarious. Some like little rubber duckies. We'll see if you believe that or you don't.
They're not shy.
Listen to this. You hear that? You go up Bear Mountain Road, hang that right on 846, stop, just walk down all the way. You'll hear these. I wouldn't bet my wife my life at the house, but I'd bet my left eye tooth, and you can hold me to it. We're gonna at least hear these tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Same place as Grace's warbler. Okay,
This is the olive warbler. Okay,
Oh.
so,
Not even a warbler anymore, but anyway,
yeah, did they take it out?
yeah, it's in another family, but we're.
So
not gonna talk
olive
taxonomy.
warblers, this is the way I remember this bird. Peg Abbott, she said, they're the color of mistletoe. They are a mistletoe bird. They're up in the mistletoe in the ponderosa pine. That's what they want. That's what they're eating is those mistletoe berries
Wow.
way up there. And it's not as yellow. It's got this big mask.
And that's the male, the female's a little more plaintive.
The only time I've seen this bird twice. Okay, you can hear it. I heard that's very distinct. The only time I've seen it was once I was helping my friend guide and we were trying to get on one for her client. So I just lay down in a field of ponderosa and just kept like a soft gaze. This is one of the ways I tell people to find a bird is try not looking so hard, but that soft gaze, waiting for movement up in the trees and not using your binoculars, looking at the whole field of the trees. And I saw the movement, put my binoculars on it, and there was an olive warbler. So if you're chasing a bird like this, that's what I would recommend, is just slowing down and focusing on this
See if I
bird.
Go to Mount Linden.
Oh,
already saw that.
yeah, because you're up much higher, right?
They love high elevation.
Yeah, they're up at Rustler in Portal, and so this is kind of low where we are.
This is occasionally a year-round resident. I've never seen it in winter, others do. Yeah, and we're not here to talk taxonomy. This is no longer in the warbler family, the folks who do all that DNA stuff. And hey, I'm
I
supposedly a
don't know any of that
biologist.
stuff.
It's closely related, but it's not in the Perluidae anymore. So now we have probably the habitat, which
That's where you-
it's not like, you're never gonna see a Grace's warbler and a Douglas fir, okay? These birds move around, they can fly. There's a lot of different birds which occur in what I call mixed coniferous forest. You'll have ponderosa pine, southwestern white pine, Douglas fir, have some alligator juniper, some gray oak. You have a mixture of things as opposed to that predominant ponderosa pine. So there's quite a list of things here, beginning with this.
Columbia's Vireo. So the Vireos, I am hesitant to say, oh yeah, you can do this in the field without difficulty. But maybe Bill's got some clues that he feels more confident in, because the yellow wash can be more intense or less intense. But distinguish it from your flycatchers and your warblers. That's the first step, right? It's squattier. It's got this sort of hookish shape here. They almost all have some kind of eye thing
That's
going.
spectacle.
Some kind of spectacle. Your which is the one with the accordion? Which was the one with the really heavy the other Vireo that's common here?
Cassins.
Yeah, Cassins Vireo is really heavily spectacled, almost like a mask. But so the Plumbeus has a distinct call which Bill will play, and it's Plumbeus. It's plum. It means lead. It's gray. So that's how I remember it, and they're very common here, and they're calling like mad right now.
Yeah, if you hear a song, it's Songus interruptus. Okay, listen to this. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I always feel like it's a little parrot going, "Pretty bird."
Little Cherry Creek Ranch Road.
Yeah.
There they are.
Yeah,
They're the
and
top-
Vireos, as opposed to most wood warblers, which are really, really nervous, just flying over the place. They're said, the word that's used to describe most Vireos, they glean. They get on a branch and they kind of work their way along. They're not nearly as active. Let's see, you may not agree with that.
No, I do. And they're sort of like in between the flycatcher, and the warblers in
Yeah,
the way they move through their habitat. They're not moving as frenetically. They're not just in one spot. They're also usually, I find Vireos to be very friendliest birds, that if you pish, they will come in, or if you play their call, usually they'll come in, or at least respond.
I won't bet my wife, but I'll bet my life and my house, we will hear this tomorrow.
Yeah.
As Susan said, these are vocalizing a whole lot. Here.
Peewee, so it's a peewee.
Yeah, this is a rather nondescript bird, which I haven't heard one of these yet. You probably have. Western wood pewee.
I heard one, but Merlin put me onto it because it was so far away.
Yeah. Wing bars, no eye ring. This distinguishes this bird from all those things that are lovingly referred to as the Impidnax flycatchers. But again, it's kind of hard to see these features when it's up there being kind of obscured by leaves.
Kind of a grayish vest, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that picture, but it's got a little grayish vest on that it's wearing. It's not gonna have any yellow, I don't think, right?
No, very
I don't
low.
think so, yeah.
But no eye ring and a couple wing bars. In the forest, there's the habitat thing, western wood
And
pewee.
they call all the time too.
Yeah, if any of you are from the eastern United States, like I am originally, there's an eastern wood pewee that goes pewee here. And so this one has a much harsher call. This is common in
It's like
coniferous
a
forest.
bird sound. Right?
Yeah, and so let's listen to this.
It's like the whistle, the gym teacher whistle.
Here.
Sounds like a flycatcher.
It does.
does.
It's got- yeah. This is the most nondescript bird you're gonna see tonight.
You come to my house, you'll see a piece of art I made of this bird. So this bird, red-faced warbler, it's pretty obvious, right? But again, getting here is like one of the best places to see them. They're flying back and forth. They're not always easy to see. So a red-faced a little gray bird that's red-faced is flying back and forth with this black wig on and a little spot of white behind it. I
I
mean,
remember that.
all of these
wig.
are very easy to see.
They're extremely aggressive. If you play their song,
Yeah, they'll come.
they will come right to you.
And so this is a bird that I'm talking
I
about.
photographed these guys. all the
Yeah.
time.
They're so beautiful. But you don't need to see, you can see this much of this bird, right? There's like little pieces of it through the leaves that you can see and go, oh, that's a red face.
I can see this, the flash of red without my glasses on,
Yeah.
without my binoculars.
Right.
It's that distinct. And so we will. With you. I don't know how to describe that, but it's distinctive once you hear it a couple times. Susan's right. This is one of the best places to see red. Friends of mine who've come down here from elsewhere in the United States, this is a bird a lot of folks have
They're
never
chasing,
seen.
yeah.
Just go right at that entrance to Cherry Creek Campground. There they are.
Bird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think we talked about
We
this
didn't talk
today.
about Stellar's Jay,
I
but
thought I better throw this in here.
the Stellar's Jay is really interesting because don't have a lot of experience seeing this bird, and we saw it up in Portal at Turkey Creek this week. And sometimes it doesn't have the white eyebrows, and sometimes it does.
The northwest subspecies don't have the white.
Right, so we're from Montana, and it confused one of our party because we were like, there's these white things on its face, and and it's very distinct field mark, these white marks, but it's a very distinct bird, right? It's almost black on top, and it's a bright electric blue, and it's also got a very distinct call that'll help you find them, usually in flocks, and but not that easy to find. They're not widespread here, but Lake Roberts is one of the places. This was also one of my nemesis birds this year that eBird kept telling me, you haven't seen the Stellar's Jay. So we finally drove out to Lake Roberts so I could get that off of my.
Those of us with Eastern sensibility, I'm in New Mexico, I've been here 22 years, but I grew up with blue jays. There are no blue jays in southern New Mexico. We have 4 species of jays. This is the only one with a crest.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of since I've got this MP3 file in here.
And usually it's a bunch of them.
Yeah, sort of like a woodhouse of scrub jay, which you see those more frequently where it's open. And I did not include that in here. Another nondescript
So
bird.
everybody wants to see this one, right? The Western Tanager. So how do we tell a tanager from the other birds? It's gonna be bigger, kind of between warbler and thrushy sized in my head, and a little not as bulky as a robin, but more slender, not as big as and at least in my mind, it doesn't present as big as an oriole, which it could be confused for. They have this nice solid bill, and the bill is important to key on when you're looking at the females or you're trying to figure out if you got a hepatic or a summer tanager. But the Western tanager, nice, distinct bird with this red face, this 2 wing bars, the entire body's yellow, So, but it does get a little confusing if you see like this and you start thinking Oriole, you know what? It can be hard. So you do want to get used to that shape. They look a little, I think this is a nice, they're kind of shaggier to me too. They're
That's
not,
the call.
and that's really common, right? You hear that call.
Chirp. Chirp. Here's, and the song took a long time. Those of you who spent time kind of sorting out black-headed grosbeaks and American robins and western tanagers. It took it. Again, eastern sensibility. If you know the scarlet tanager from the east, it's got a harsh character to it, as this does. We're not in the east, we're out here. That's how I distinguish this from the black-headed grosbeak, which is coming up.
Always thought them as a robin with a sore throat.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. So these are everywhere right now. The black-headed grosbeak. We don't have the females. We've been
No.
discriminating.
And I thought about the rose-breasted grosbeak, but I've already had enough slide. We can, at the end, we can
Yeah,
pull
we-
a few pictures up. Go ahead.
So, well, it's orange, but it's not a bright orange. It's kind of a rusty, dull orange with the black head. The bill it's so heavy. It's called a grosbeak for a reason. Gross being big, not messy. No eye ring. This kind of messy wing pattern. That's what, a lot of times this is what I clue on. I'm like, if I see something go by, I'm like, oh, look, that's a grosbeak, because it's got this messy, they're not really bars. And this color's kind of unique too, but you know, that could be like a robin color.
Yeah, as I tell my students, when you're starting out, superficially, it looks like a spotted towhee. Of course, a spotted towhee looks like the whole front end has been dipped in ink.
Yeah.
This bird is not. Not many birds do I know vocalizations. The call of this one, like the rose-breasted grosbeak. It sounds like I'm a former high school math teacher. I don't know how I got through 9 years of using chalk, but just if you think about taking a piece of chalk and that's what the call note of the rose-breasted grosbeak and this thing. Once you hear that a few times, you'll be able to show off and identify the call. It's unlike anything other than the rose-breasted grosbeak in the song. Go ahead.
Tomorrow we need to be cautious because there are rose-breasted grosbeaks moving through the area right now. I know they're in Jeff's yard, and we saw some in Portal as well. They're migrating through. Yeah, and they're with these guys. So
There are records of them forming hybrids.
yeah. So if we're lucky, we'll look for a rose-breasted. There's our chickadee. Our mountain chickadee. So one of my questions was, why don't we have Mexican chickadees here? And I guess they could be here, but they haven't really been seen. So, but the way to distinguish this eyebrow, the Mexican doesn't have that white eyebrow. It's a nice little round little blurb, as they say, it's a little round bird with the black up under its beak and above its head with a white eyebrow. Sort of looks angry for a friendly little bird, but most of us know what our chickadees look like. Chickadee. Bert and I are musicians, and we actually play a song that we call chickadee because it sounds like that. But you could confuse it with your bridal tip mouse, excuse me, because that facial markings, you see this part. But this guy, he's got, what's that? He's got the crown. He's got the bridle. This is these markings. That's where the name came from on the face. It's flitting around. Again, I find these hard to get an eyeball on sometimes. Sometimes they'll be just sitting right there. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
They've been more common in my experience this winter than these things.
The juniper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had them in my yard in silver.
Okay. Now, in this, had one of these at the Silver City Post Office about 6 weeks ago. What is that? Doesn't sound like a typical titmouse. Now, I think we're on to some maybe more, well, these are impressive birds here, some more ferocious looking birds. Well, maybe not, this one's not so ferocious. This one I've never seen, but I've heard plenty of times at Cherry Creek Campground. You want to tell us about Northern Pygmy Owl?
I I don't even know if I've seen one in Mexico.
It's diurnal,
Yeah.
and I've heard them in the day. They have a very distinctive call. Whoop, sorry.
So this hooting call is like one of the secret weapons of bird guides. You can play this call and you want to, of course, use discretion. Wouldn't do it this time of year. I wouldn't do it during migration. I wouldn't do it, but at other times of year when the birds aren't under stress, this can cause them to swarm and bring in a mixed flock of birds to chase off the pygmy owl. But so here's what I do know about owls. I have not seen very many in Grant County yet, except for the great horned owl. If you can hear an owl, especially this owl, it's much closer than you think. So it's the opposite of the white-breasted nuthatch. If you're hearing this pygmy owl, it's a really good chance it's within 20 feet of you, and you really should try to put in the effort to get your eyes on it, because it's probably just not very far up, and it's just relying on its camouflage.
But that toot, very distinctive. There's a fairly hit, by the way, and I didn't want to just overwhelm everybody with a bunch of pictures. If I could have found a good photo of the back of the head of this bird, it's like a cecropian moth.
Oh,
Gretchen, it's got spots on the back. You know, there's a federally endangered close relative of this, which occurs in the burbs of Tucson, the ferruginous, and also South Texas, the ferruginous.
and how big? They're really small.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had very little experience with owls.
Well, that was a big segue up to this
Is that
bird.
a goshawk?
Yeah, northern goshawk. This occurs in the forest. This is, I think, a candidate or is of special concern. Big bird of prey. I know at least one of you in here has spent a lot of time in Canada. This is probably the most dangerous bird in Canada. My wife, Denise, who some of you know, has spent 25 years ago, was helping people ban birds of prey. You get near a nest of a northern goshawk, you better have a flak jacket and a bike helmet on.
Yeah.
You're gonna get attacked.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the three accipiters in North America. This is the biggest, baddest one of all.
I don't have any experience with this bird. Like I told you, I've never really seen it.
Yeah, so it got this sort of looks superficial like an osprey, which of course isn't
Right.
that black mask, that white
Is it
eye line right there.
Is it a red eye?
Gray and
Is
brown.
it a
Yeah.
red eye?
Yeah,
That's important.
yeah, forest bird.
And I find this can be hard in the field when you're learning, like the peregrine, this stripe goes down, right? It doesn't go straight across. It's gonna curve down and sort of like the mustache, the malar stripe.
And as accipiters go, big fat wings, long narrow tail,
Right.
just like a sharp-shinned hawk, just like these Cooper's hawk, which terrorize the songbirds coming to our bird feeders, just like a northern goshawk. Okay, so anyway, yeah, that I've gone out with my students in past years looking for spotted owls. We've never seen one, but we've got northern goshawks right up there at that trail at McMillan.
I photographed those.
That one we got up
Same
there.
pair.
Yep.
And they raised young,
Are they still there?
which was really great. Now that brown color is not distinctive. They're much
Aren't they usually
darker.
gray?
It's really white underneath.
That's
Very gray,
Aren't
very,
they usually grayer?
yeah, much grayer.
Mm,
Even the female or?
Yeah, even the female.
yeah.
Seems much bigger.
You talk about owls, I'm like, I don't know any of these owls.
So one thing we are not gonna do, none of you would deign to do this, and I've learned this is a federally, the Mexican spotted owl, a subspecies of the spotted owl, federally endangered.
How big are they?
About the size, maybe just a little smaller than a barred owl, if you have any
Okay.
experience with that. You cannot legally play a tape of a spotted owl. We can go out there and that was a pretty pitiful imitation of this. One of my students who just finished up ornithology, works on spotted owls in the summer. He can imitate this. You couldn't tell the difference. You cannot play a tape to try to attract these birds. But we go out there and they are there. My student, Evan, he was out there. He showed me some pictures at dusk. And that's another call. So we're fortunate.
I can't remember what owl.
Yeah, anyway, if you go camp some like halfway up Signal Peak, Aspen Grove there,
Yes.
you'll hear them. Okay, so that's our federally endangered spotted owl. All right, and they're being outcompeted by barred owls are moving in far more widespread from the eastern end. They're moving in and outcompeting these birds in their old growth habitat, particularly in California. but these are in Cherry Creek Canyon. And so if we get real lucky, I have never seen one.
I've never seen.
Yeah, so maybe with all these young eyes in here, you know, and good ears, maybe with all of us, if you're coming out tomorrow, maybe we'll get one. Jackie, now you're gonna tell me that you and Jim saw one of these too?
Yeah.
Up to,
We saw, yeah, it was in Venice, she saw it too.
I've got pictures of
He's got-
that's Cherry Creek?
And.
along that route.
You guys coming
that trail
tomorrow?
goes from Cherokee campground. You take the trail all the way south,
Yeah,
and you know where you can.
down Bear Canyon down there?
Well,
Yeah.
where you park, there's a spot for 2 or 3 cars.
That's where I'm gonna be our first stop tomorrow, by the way. That's where we look for peregrine falcons.
If you, that's where I saw them, and
Okay,
I've got pictures of these guys,
great.
really great.
So if we get lucky tomorrow, maybe we'll hear these, maybe we'll
I
see
can
them.
show you where I shot, where I photographed this
All right.
branch there.
All right,
There.
mixed coniferous forest. And now,
I mean, this is a class, right? That's one of the things about birds, I think, that it's important to remember or learn. They have habits. So you're likely to find many birds where you saw the bird the year before, day before. Year in and year out. It might not be the same bird, but they teach each other the same good places. And you'll find, I know in Baja where I'm gonna find a loggerhead shrike. I know where I'm gonna find the Harris's hawks. They're almost predictable. And so the more time you spend in the field, the more you get that feeling of like, oh, I remember. And I think it's something in our DNA to remember where we've seen these things because our lives used to depend upon it, whether it was food or predators or whatever. And so somehow as I bird here more and more, I get it incorporated into my head without really even thinking, oh yeah, this is where I saw the such and such last year. And there it is. So
this is a picture, I couldn't find a good one near Cherry Creek. This is taken at the cliff dwelling that shows the habitat. An open, fairly steep slope with scattered trees, maybe some young ponderosa, maybe it's been burned. This semi-open forest habitat on slopes tends to be the place where you see this, which is the ash-throated flycatcher.
this is the first call I ever learned was the ash-throated flycatcher.
You mean this?
Yeah, that's the classic gym teacher telling you to stop.
Oh, the whistle, now I get it.
Yeah, see, it's just like a
Yeah.
quick short whistle. It's not the long whistle of that earlier. And so.
Got rusty tail.
Rusty on the wing bars, it's not, the contrast is more, on the dusky cap, it's stronger. On the, what's the other one that's bigger?
The brown crested.
Brown
Get down there in the lower heel
Yeah.
valley.
Yeah, you'll hear that.
And this is a friendly bird and it calls all day long.
Go up to
So
Little Walnut, you'll hear and see
Yeah.
these birds.
all over, City of Rocks.
Yep.
They like diverse habitat. So I learned this bird in Mexico, the black-throated gray warbler, and I was so excited the first time I saw it, and I thought it was a black and white warbler, and didn't know how to tell the difference. Do we have black and whites here?
We had one, vagrant bird, Christmas bird counted, Jose Barrios, Karen Blissard identified it.
This yellow
Yeah.
spot is what you're looking for, but here you don't have to obsess too much about that. So it's got this nice call. Again, it's moving a lot, but it could be down lower moving. Now that I think about it, it's usually like in shrubs, stuff like that. And it's got this nice, this is a common pattern in birds, the alternating stripes. That yellow mark is how you know you've got the black-throated gray. And of course, I'm like, why is it even called gray? But it's got the gray back and it's got the black. Lucy,
Virginia's.
Virginia. Sorry. Yes, Virginia, sorry.
Susan's doing this cold, by the way. I just finished it this afternoon. And Lucy's looks very similar to this.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really. I mean, the Lucy's is gonna be more drab and the color is gonna be more on the butt and the chin a little bit. I can't remember. So sometimes, because the birds are new to me, I have to look at them. I don't have a mental picture yet of some of these birds, but when I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that is. So that's how, like, I looked at this and the wrong name came to me. So the eye ring, gray bird, yellow here, yellow there. Also heard frequently more than seen. These
Yes.
are all over San Vicente Creek though.
Black water.
They do like their water.
Yeah, this yellow at the base of the tail, very distinctive. If you never see it,
So
but
this is
if you had a specimen,
I'm thinking Lucy's.
yeah, Lucy's is gonna
Lucy's-
be rusty.
Yeah, but Lucy's is in San Vicente. I don't know. about
Yeah,
this.
you can go down to one of my favorite places to eat, Mexico Viejo, down there, right at the corner of Broadway, right at Big Ditch. You'll hear Lucy's word, not this.
Yeah,
There's no Lucy's up
confused
on
for a
the
second. That's
forest.
why I want to clarify. I have not heard these in the ditch.
Yeah, okay.
I'm singing the other birds.
So we'll hear these in these open slopes.
Where is Lucy's? Is she not on the list?
No, because you guys tell me we have a lot of experienced birders in here. I think of the Lucy's Warbler more like the Gila bird area, the more open, the lower Gila Valley.
Yeah, I got.
And they're passing through, you'll hear
Yeah,
them
I
along.
heard them this week. So,
Yeah.
but like I said, this is only my second migration birding in the area, so I don't have that like depth of understanding of what's normal or not normal in some of these habitats.
There are some birds that really like brush. And some of them are really noisy, like this fella. Anybody know who this is? Who is that? House wren. Yeah, so let's listen to this. These are aggressive little suckers, aren't they?
So how do you know you have a wren? First off, this tail going up 45 degrees, that's like your big thing. The bill is hard to see here, but the bill usually is quite distinctly curved.
You'll hear more funny.
And you'll hear them, and they're also friendly, especially to pishing. If you pish, they'll respond.
Aggressive little suckers.
Yeah, and the other, we don't have them on the list, the Buicks.
Yeah, we do. It's coming up at the very end. Maybe I forgot to list it. I put that in just general. That's
Yeah.
coming up.
Because I just wanted to point out, not a lot of contrast. Some of these
Kind of a warm, a little bit, they call it counter shading, a little richer brown dorsally, a little more kind of a tan beige ventrally, but this is the most, I think, uniformly more or less brown wren.
If there's nothing to hang your hat on, then you probably got a house wren, okay?
Unless you got a stubby little tail, then it's either a winter wren or Pacific wren.
And then we don't want to worry about that.
That's
but
why it's not in here.
That could, yeah, but eyebrows, Buicks,
Yeah.
there's other things for the other
There's a
wren.
bunch of brush right at the entrance to Cherry Creek. These were singing up a storm a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
if you've never seen a house wren. Then we got to play the song of this bird,
Yay.
the flute. Yep. And there are a few other, and Susan was telling me, there are a few other thrushes which are passing through right now. This one's resident.
Yeah.
I grew up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And this bird, I was really astounded when I moved here 22 years ago. Hey, we got some of these this bird I grew up with up there on the Canadian border. It's here. I couldn't believe it. And we will hear these tomorrow. It's one of the most melodious birds that you can imagine.
I didn't hear him the other morning. I saw one. It's a hermit thrush.
Mhm.
So faint iron,
That rusty tail.
robin shaped rusty tail. The markings, they start out stronger and they kind of fade. If you want, the hermit thrush nearly moved me to tears. It's at about dusk at Cherry Creek. They're calling everywhere. It's just so beautiful. Such a beautiful chorus. In the evening, I really like that. I'm kind of not an early girl, so I do a lot of evening
Is that
birding.
true bird? Yeah. Then we
That
have,
would be a trial.
yeah.
Spotted Joey.
Hearing these all over Silver City. This is one of the easier vocalizations.
I'm getting older.
Yeah. So they have one, it sounds like a cat. Meow. It's not a cat
We
bird.
don't have one here.
Did I not list it?
No, I was thinking of Junco.
I didn't put that in here because they're moving on. There's plenty of birds here.
Yeah.
We're getting towards the end, folks. Some of the birds which are passing through, I did not include. So they had this meow, and then they had this chap, chap, chap.
Yeah.
Chap, chap, chap.
But you can easily, you can get lost. This is one of those danger zones. This is that robin color, right? So you want to get you can't really rely if you only get this little bit of a view. You got to get some more of it.
And here's the song. These are calling all over Silver City, New Mexico.
I wake up and I think, what's that called? And then I go, oh yeah, it's the towhee.
Took me forever to be able to separate. I'm gonna have something to say about that in the last slide. Took me a while to sort this out from the vocalization of Buick's wren, believe it or not. So anyway, looks like a black-headed grosbeak, but it's been dipped in ink.
Red eye.
To be on the ground.
Yeah, and there's an
And
answer.
yeah, you know, so here's the jizz, like that grosbeak's gonna be like this, right? It's gonna be in a bush. These guys, they're flatter, the tail's going up.
Scratching around in the ground.
Scratching, yeah, he's got it. He wouldn't find a towhee sitting like a grosbeak does.
Now, I think this is the last specific category. I had a few
God.
birds at the end, which I call general because they're so ubiquitous. Birds which like either be on the water or up in trees right above the water, including this.
Painted redstart.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's so many field marks on this bird, right? This is important. It's under the eye thing, especially in the female, I believe. Are they the same? I can't remember. I was just reading about this. I'm confusing myself. They got this big white, I wouldn't even call it an arm, a bar. I think this is white here. And then we got the bright red. So,
They love being right down on the
they're
water.
right on the water and they like, I think this is the one that nests in the banks. It'll like get under a exposed root and have its nest under there.
Yeah, we should see these tomorrow right along the creek. And then this is probably the most nondescript bird.
I think these are so beautiful. I must have a sensitivity, a softness for this, like, it's just, when you see a warbling vireo, this eyebrow is very distinct. You can see that, you can see, it has a beautiful call. And
Excuse me, please squeeze me till it hurts.
And sort of like
What it says.
what we were talking about on the house wren, the subtle variation in the colors are the giveaway and the eyebrow.
Squeeze me, please squeeze me, well, please squeeze me till it hurts. The eastern versions that say that a little more, like I just said, but that's a little mnemonic.
Do they stay?
Yeah. And this is the one we talked about right at the beginning
I
there.
was like, I'm not gonna try.
Courtier and fly. Yeah, it's easy for me. I put this PowerPoint together after we consulted a few days ago. You know, this difficult group of flycatchers with 2 wing bars and an eye ring, habitat by the creek, yellow at the base of the bill, but 2 wing bars, this eye ring here, you're in a riparian forest, it's probably a Cordilleran flycatcher. If you're in California, there's one that looks identical to this. It's called a Pacific Slope
And
flycatcher.
sometimes they overlap. And
I don't know how those folks in Arizona tell these two apart
I
in the
know,
winter.
exactly. So I'm afraid, I've been beaten by the eBird reviewer and he's like, you can't tell us apart. And I'm like, well,
But I heard this. Got a very distinctive vocalization.
and this is more of a football shape too. It's not a
Teardrop,
very good,
yeah.
yeah, it's elongated eye ring. And the bicolor bill. So the reason I'm mentioning these things, because if you actually become proficient at these birds, the wing bar, the wing extension, the bicolor bill, these are all the questions you need to ask yourself to learn these birds more thoroughly than I have. And so in the field, if you're trying to catch a picture, wing extension is really important. And the bill color, and the call.
You hear this? High up in the trees, like one of those narrow-leaf cottonwoods, it's this. Okay? We got 6 to go,
We're gonna
5
make
to
it
go.
Oh, yeah.
Bullock's Oriole. I don't know who Mr. Bullock was.
How come that's not a hooded Oriole? Because it's not.
This is what I say about the hooded Oriole. The hooded Oriole and the,
Doesn't have that.
what's the other Oriole from?
Scots.
Scots. Okay, so the Scots Oriole is all yellow, okay?
Yellow and black.
Oh, yeah.
The head, okay, I'm talking about the head. Scots is
Black.
all black.
Right.
Scots Oriole is all black. These are black birds, okay? The Oriole is a black bird. So it's really wearing an outfit. The black bird's got an outfit on. So if it's a hooded Oriole, it's put a yellow hoodie on. It's covered his head with a little yellow hoodie. He no longer looks like a blackbird, okay? And then the Scots, solid, and the Bullocks, this eye line or eyebrow, whatever you want. It's this
Supercilious.
super, Thank you.
The black crown.
Black crown and black from the lores through the eye, all black, and then, you know, you can't, this is common in all three. So, and then this is more white on the wing than the other two.
Yeah.
But so that's what I clue into. You can't, people talk about the color, they vary, the orangishness to the yellowy, how they vary. You can't really rely upon that to make the call. When you get the females, you're gonna have to look at this wing, the shape.
Yellow, white, yellow. That's how that's distinguished. That distinguishes the female from the other two orioles. That's something I've learned recently.
So which female goes yellow, white?
Bullock's oriole, the female in immature, is yellow, white, kind of like a common yellow.
Right, so the Scots from the hooded, do we have both those here? I don't know.
Yeah, Scott's more kind of drier country out there. You can ask Jackie and Jim out for right flat.
I can't remember, but the bill shape is straighter on one of those and more hooked on the other, and that's how I tell the females apart, but I'd have to go review. I haven't seen either of them in so long.
So since we have some musicians here, you two, and I'm not a musician by anybody's definition, but this sounds really, the song is, it's pleasing to the ear, but it sounds discordant, like the notes are just jumping all, sounds like avian jazz. It's just, it's not really melodious and, you know, stereo. Would you agree with that, Bert? Absolutely. If not, I won't be offended.
It's got that little thing, the pew pew at the end there.
Yeah. So beautiful bird, and we tend to see it.
And that's a bird that, you know, I'd never seen until I moved here last year. I'd never seen a Bullock's.
Yeah. And then there's the last few birds here are they're so ubiquitous that I didn't really feel comfortable just pigeonholing them into one of these specific categories, starting with, of course, the American robin. These are everywhere. I have struggled as I teach my ornithology students. We don't learn a lot of vocalization. That's tough. Especially learning bird vocalization from MP3 yeah, that's right. But the best way to learn bird vocalizations, number one, start when you're young. I was fortunate. I started when I was in my 20s, thank goodness. But when I see the bird and I hear it sing at the same time, that's when it sticks. If I listen to the MP3 files, like the ones Roland gave, that's good for reference, but I got to see the bird and hear it. And the American robin has, as you just alluded to, Susan, has such a repertoire of vocalizations. I don't have students learn this one. It's just, I mean, it's the voice. I don't know how to describe that.
Although, you know, I listen to it, I'm like, oh, that's a robin.
Right.
And they're everywhere. I have to share with you, just because I learned something from one, I learn from my students all the time. I also struggled with describing Gambel's quail. One of my students, Kate from Berlin, she gave it to me. Here, doesn't this sound like wow? Wow. Next time you hear a bunch of Gambel's quail, that's not all they do, but why? That's what they do. So when I teach ornithology in a couple of years, yeah, you guys remember Kate Bohannon? No, we don't know, but she taught me how to identify, to teach the vocalization of a
Yeah.
Gambel's quail.
In Mexico, they call it the chihuahua.
Because that's what they sound like.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'll remember that too.
That's the name of the bird.
Of course, we got hummingbirds. We got a whole raft of these, two of them.
No, I only make the IDs based on the sound for, you know, I don't even try to.
Yeah, the sounds has that, I learned this from my wife Denise, has that metallic character. This is the one you're more frequently going to see in the forest, the broad-tailed. The black chin, even not to say you won't see it in the forest, that's going to be more open country. That doesn't have the metallic character. And so anyway, we might hear or see that.
And so talk about learning though. So Bill told me last year,
Don't believe anything I say.
my wife told me this sounds like jingle bells, and I have never forgotten it because that's how I learned. He shared something meaningful.
That I learned from Denise.
That he learned from Denise. He shared it to me. And now every time I hear that sound, I was like, Denise says that sounds like jingle bells.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's what happens in my brain every time.
Yeah. And then I have to share a little story about Buick's wren. I think this is the
Yeah,
last
so
bird.
cute.
I forgot the northern flicker. I forgot the turkey vulture. I had, and of course, compared to a house wren, it's got the strong counter shading, brown dorsally, white beige ventrally. I had a heck of a time, believe it or not, distinguishing this. Let's listen to the vocalization. From a spotted towhee. And now I can do it. It's a thinner vocalization, and spotted towhee's it's more of a chap, chap, chap. Buick's wrens, frequently it's that single whistle. It took me 2 or 3 years. And the person who got me over the hump was Marion Zimmerman. Everyone knows about Dale, the world-class ornithologist. Marion, and probably the only person in town that knew birds almost as well as Dale, was Marion Zimmerman. And Marion, who died about 12 years ago, I remember her telling me about 15, 18 years ago, well, Bill, if you've just gone through this kind of a rule out all the other birds, nothing else works, it's probably a Buick threat. That's what I learned, along with a lot of other things, from Marion Zimmerman. And anyway, this is an abundant bird. We're going to hear them. I'm glad you mentioned this when I was over at your place the other day. You hear these all over the place. You rarely see them, but they're everywhere.
If you want to see them, the ash grove, the velvet ash grove at Members River Ranch, they are pretty bold and come out there, and they're calling everywhere.
Yeah. So just to sum up here, you know, we're all going to go out. I hope you can come out tomorrow. It's not just about seeing the bird, because we'll hear more than we see. And habitat, their behavior, what you're hearing, what you're seeing with all of us, it takes a village. We'll be able to detect a lot of these birds. We'll have a lot of fun. Okay, this is prime time for detecting birds in Cherry Creek Canyon. So I want to, Susan came in here cold. We talked about this. She's just, I mean, she's an experienced public speaker. She just went off. There was no preparation for her giving us all these characters. Let's give Susan a hand. I'm pretty impressed. Yeah. And I hope you're all able to come tomorrow. We're going to meet at the Fine Arts Center at 7 o'clock. Michelle, I'm done talking. Take it.
Oh, no, well, I was just wondering if there were any questions.
Yeah.
We could take a couple minutes for that. There was something in the chat for a while here,
Okay.
and I wanted to see.
I've been wondering if people want to learn how to use,
Okay, Dave.
I'll be using my technical tools in the field tomorrow.
Dave, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, so Dave asked if we could
Send the slides.
send the slides, okay,
Yeah.
along. And I think if we're lucky, we've recorded this and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You can find that link on our website, SWNM.org. If you pick up one of the sheets, information sheets, all that's on there.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody from the remote side want to have a question? If you want to unmute yourself and ask,
Yeah.
or
Just going to ask Jerry Ann out there. We spent a lot of time in Tucson. You see a lot of hooded orioles in Tucson. Is that right, Jerry Ann, or is that just a misimpression? Is that correct? Lots of hooded orioles in Tucson?
Yes,
In here?
yes, definitely.
More desert habitat? Would you say, or more, what's the habitat of
Tucson.
hooded orioles?
Well, since I was at the Desert Museum
I
25
know
years,
that.
I would say that they're there. Oh,
Well, in Baja, it's the giant cacti. You know, they want
Yeah.
those big cacti, they go into them, and the palms. They like the palms.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hooded orioles in Patagonia State Park.
Yeah.
Are there?
Yep.
Well, you guys did pretty good. Some of you heard me say, I'm a former public school teacher. I had a class 40 years ago. What was this? Before I started teaching high school, educational psychology. And the instructor, he was really good. This is at Northern Michigan University. He took an hour and 15 minutes to tell us that all the research and all the evidence suggested that the average attention span of the average adult is 20 minutes. Here we are, an hour and a half into it. I would never have deigned to put together a PowerPoint like this with plants. You know, I'm primarily a botanist. But birds, I tell you what, they're just fascinating. I had a great ornithology professor that 40 years ago passed away a few years ago, Dr. Ray Riley at my alma mater, Lake Superior State University. And he'd get so fired up. It's easy to get fired up. And boy, that took. And I've been watching birds ever since.